Rich man agreed to go on a date with the ugliest girl in the company to help a friend, however when she arrived, he was left speechless when he saw. In the bright, sun-drenched conference room of Harrington Enterprises, Samuel Harrington sat at the head of an expansive, glossy mahogany table. The walls were adorned with accolades and photographs of his achievements, yet despite the accolades and the palpable energy radiating from his colleagues, a profound emptiness weighed heavily on his heart. Laughter mingled with the smell of fresh coffee, and his peers surrounded him, showering him with compliments about his recent successes. But as he smiled and nodded, thanking them for their praise, Samuel felt an inexplicable void. "Another record-breaking quarter, Sam," exclaimed Jessica, one of his most ambitious team members. "You're unstoppable." "Yeah, what's your secret?" chimed in Greg, a close colleague, nudging Samuel playfully. Samuel chuckled, but the laughter felt hollow. "Just hard work and a little luck, I suppose," he replied, his voice steady but his mind drifting to thoughts of unfulfilled dreams and silent desperation. Just then, Oliver Reed, his longtime friend and confidant, entered the room. Samuel had always relied on Oliver for a dose of honesty in a world filled with sycophants. But today, Oliver's usual buoyancy was replaced by a nervous energy that caught Samuel's attention. "Hey, Sam, can I talk to you for a moment?" Oliver said, glancing around as if to gauge the mood of the room. "Sure, what's up?" Samuel replied, rising from his chair, curiosity piqued. He stepped aside into a quieter corner of the room, away from the clamor of admiration. "I've been thinking," Oliver started, his voice low, "about Marissa Thompson. You know, the shy one in marketing." "Marissa? What about her?" Samuel asked, furrowing his brow. He had never paid much attention to Marissa, who was often overshadowed by the more vocal members of the team. "I think you should meet her. I know you're not one for blind dates, but hear me out," Oliver urged, his excitement bubbling over. "She's got this incredible passion for photography, and I think you would really connect. You could use someone like her in your life." Samuel hesitated, a frown creasing his forehead. "Oliver, I appreciate the thought, but I'm really busy right now. I don't think I need a distraction." "This isn't a distraction, Sam. It's an opportunity," Oliver insisted, his eyes wide with enthusiasm. "You're always talking about how you feel trapped in this corporate bubble. Maybe she can help you see things differently. Or maybe she'll just be another person I disappoint," Samuel countered, crossing his arms defensively. "Just give it a shot," Oliver pressed, his tone shifting to one of earnestness. "You might be surprised. She's not what you think, there's depth to her. Just meet her for coffee." Samuel sighed, feeling the weight of Oliver's expectations pressing down on him. "Fine, I'll meet her. But I can't promise anything," he relented, a mix of curiosity and reluctance swirling within him. As he prepared for the meeting, Samuel found himself lost in thought. He had always viewed Marissa as a mere background character in the corporate drama of his life, someone whose existence barely registered on his radar. How could a woman so unassuming possibly change anything for him? Yet, as he adjusted his tie and glanced in the mirror, he felt a flicker of anticipation. Perhaps it was time to step outside his comfort zone, to confront the invisible walls he had built around himself. Later that day, as the sun began its descent, casting a golden hue across the city, Samuel arrived at the cafe they had chosen for their meeting. He paced nervously, glancing at the door every few moments. What would she be like? Would she be as timid as he imagined, or was there more to her than met the eye? Samuel took a deep breath, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Unaware that this meeting would ripple through the fabric of his life in ways he could never have anticipated. As sunlight streamed through the large windows of the conference room, Samuel Harrington leaned back in his chair, absorbing the flattery of his colleagues. The air was thick with admiration, their voices a chorus of praise for his recent successes. Yet, as he listened to their words, a wave of emptiness washed over him. The accolades felt hollow, a facade that masked the growing discontent within. He glanced at the polished mahogany table, recalling the countless hours he had poured into his work, and wondered if this was all there was to life. Just then, Oliver Reed, his longtime friend and confidant, burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "Sam! You won't believe what I just arranged," he said, practically bouncing on his feet. Samuel raised an eyebrow, intrigued but wary. Oliver had a knack for spontaneity that occasionally led to chaotic outcomes. "What is it, Oliver?" Samuel asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. "I've set up a meeting for you with Marissa Thompson," Oliver declared, the name hanging in the air like a curious riddle. "You know, the shy one from marketing. I think it'll be good for both of you." Samuel frowned slightly. The idea of meeting Marissa, who had always seemed so invisible, didn't excite him. "Why would I want to meet her?" he questioned, trying to mask his reluctance. "She's not exactly the type of person I usually associate with." Oliver crossed his arms, a serious expression replacing his earlier enthusiasm. "That's precisely why you should. She has a unique perspective, and you might discover something valuable. You need to get out of your comfort zone, Sam." After a moment of hesitation, Samuel sighed, surrendering to Oliver's persistence. "Fine. I'll meet her," he replied, though he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter might lead him somewhere unexpected. The day of the meeting arrived, and Samuel stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie while mentally preparing himself. He had built a reputation for being decisive and commanding, but the thought of facing Marissa, a woman he had barely noticed until now, filled him with an unusual sense of trepidation. He couldn't help but wonder about the woman behind the quiet demeanor. What stories lay behind her timid smile? When Marissa stepped into the room, Samuel felt a jolt of surprise. She was not what he expected. Instead of the timid, mousy figure he had conjured in his mind, Marissa radiated a quiet strength. Her eyes sparkled with an authenticity that intrigued him, and her smile, though shy, was warm. "Hi, Samuel," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for meeting with me." "Of course, Marissa," he replied, forcing himself to maintain eye contact. "I've been looking forward to it." He motioned for her to sit, and as she settled into the chair opposite him, he couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was more significant than he had initially believed. The conversation began hesitantly, with both of them unsure of how to bridge the gap between their worlds. Samuel asked about her role in marketing, and she responded with a thoughtful explanation. But soon, the dialogue shifted. Marissa began to open up about her true passion: photography. "I've always loved capturing moments," she confessed, her cheeks flushing as she spoke. "It's like freezing time, you know. The way light dances through trees, the laughter of friends. It's magical. But I've never had the confidence to share my work." Samuel leaned forward, intrigued. "Why not? If it means so much to you, you should share it with the world." Marissa looked down, fidgeting with her hands. "I guess I've always felt invisible. Like my dreams were too big for someone like me." As she spoke, a wave of empathy washed over Samuel. He found himself captivated by her vulnerability, her unfiltered passion igniting a spark within him. "You're not invisible, Marissa. Everyone has their struggles. I often feel the weight of expectations, trying to prove myself in this cutthroat business world," he admitted, his voice low and sincere. Marissa lifted her gaze, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "Really? I always thought you had it all figured out." Samuel chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Far from it. Sometimes, I wonder if this success is worth the price I pay." In that moment, an unspoken connection blossomed between them, a shared understanding that transcended their differences. Samuel was drawn to the depth of her dreams and the beauty of her spirit. He realized that this encounter with Marissa was not just another meeting, it was a revelation, a key that might unlock parts of himself he had long buried. Samuel leaned back in his chair, the soft leather cradling him as he studied Marissa across the table. The sunlight streamed through the large windows of the cafe, casting a warm glow over the room and softening the edges of their conversation. Her eyes sparkled with an enthusiasm that was unexpected, and he found himself drawn in by her authenticity. "Sometimes, I feel like I'm just blending into the background," Marissa confessed, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "It's like I'm invisible to everyone around me, including my own family." Samuel nodded, feeling a strange kinship with her words. "I get that. In the business world, it's all about the spotlight, and sometimes it feels like everyone's just vying for attention, not really connecting with each other. It's exhausting." Marissa looked up, her gaze locking onto his. "You're Samuel Harrington. You must have it all figured out," she said softly, a hint of admiration in her voice. "Everyone talks about your success. You're like a star." A faint smile crossed his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I appreciate that, but it's not as glamorous as it seems. There's a lot of pressure to maintain this image. Expectations can be suffocating." He paused, searching for the right words. "I often feel like I'm just playing a role, and it can be incredibly lonely." Marissa's brow furrowed slightly. "Lonely? But you have so many people around you," she said, her voice laced with confusion. "How can you feel alone?" "Because most of them don't know the real me," Samuel replied, a wave of vulnerability washing over him. "They see the successful businessman, but they don't see the person behind the title. It's like I'm trapped in a glass box, where everyone can see me, but no one can truly reach me." Her expression softened, and Samuel noticed the way she leaned in closer, captivated by his honesty. "That's really sad, actually," she murmured. "But I think it's brave of you to admit that." "Brave?" Samuel chuckled lightly, but his heart raced at her perception. "I guess it's easier to hide behind a mask than to show vulnerability." Marissa took a deep breath, her courage building. "I feel the same way. I've always wanted to be seen for who I am, but I've let my fears hold me back. I want to take risks, but I'm terrified of failing." "Failure is just part of the journey," Samuel said, his voice steady. "It's how we grow. If we never take risks, we'll never know what we're capable of." Marissa's eyes brightened, and he could see the spark of determination igniting within her. "You really believe that?" "I do," he affirmed. "I've learned that the only way to truly connect with people is to be vulnerable, to let them see your struggles alongside your successes." As they talked, Samuel felt a shift in the atmosphere. The barriers he had built around himself began to crumble, and he found himself sharing more than he intended. "When I was starting out, I faced a lot of rejection. There were times I thought about giving up," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Marissa leaned in, her expression earnest. "You're so inspiring, Samuel. I wish I could have that level of courage." "You have it, too," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "You just need to tap into it. Your passion for photography. It's incredible. You have a unique perspective on the world, and that's something to be proud of." Marissa smiled shyly, touched by his words. "Thank you. I've always wanted to capture people's stories, to show their true selves. But I've been too afraid to put my work out there." In that moment, Samuel saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes, something he hadn't witnessed before. "Maybe we can work on something together," he suggested, the idea forming organically. "I'd love to help you showcase your photography. You deserve to be seen." Her face lit up, and for the first time, he saw the confidence blooming within her. "Really? You do that for me?" "Absolutely," he replied, feeling a rush of excitement. "Let's create something beautiful." As their conversation flowed, an undeniable chemistry began to develop between them. Samuel could sense the walls they both had built around their hearts starting to crumble, allowing for a connection that was both unexpected and exhilarating. They exchanged stories and laughter, and with each passing moment, he found himself enchanted by Marissa's spirit, her vulnerability, and her passion. In that small cafe, surrounded by the noise of the outside world, Samuel and Marissa discovered not just a kindred spirit in one another, but a profound understanding that transcended their previous lives. As they locked eyes, the unspoken promise lingered in the air, they were no longer alone in their journeys. As days turned into weeks after their fateful meeting, Samuel and Marissa found themselves growing closer, their connection deepening with each passing conversation. The spark ignited during their first encounter lingered in the air, suffusing their interactions with an unspoken tension. One afternoon, while they were seated in the cozy corner of a local cafe, the sun streaming through the window, Marissa's eyes lit up with excitement as she shared her latest idea. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice a mix of enthusiasm and nervousness. "What if I create a photography project that captures the essence of the people around me? Their stories, their emotions. I want to show the world how beautiful everyone is, even if they don't see it themselves." Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her napkin, as she gauged Samuel's reaction. Samuel leaned in closer, intrigued by her passion. "That sounds amazing, Marissa. You have a real talent for seeing beyond the surface. Your photos from the other day, they were stunning. You have a unique perspective." Marissa smiled shyly, her cheeks flushing slightly at his praise. "You really think so? I want to help people feel seen. I know what it's like to feel invisible." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I get that. In my world, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. But you have a gift, and I'd love to help you bring this project to life." Her eyes widened in surprise. "You would do that? Help me?" "Absolutely. Let's brainstorm together. I can help you organize a few sessions, maybe even set up some interviews with the subjects you want to photograph," he proposed, his enthusiasm growing. Marissa's heart raced at the thought of working alongside him. "That would be incredible. I've always wanted to incorporate more personal stories into my work, but I've been too afraid to step outside my comfort zone." "Let's break those barriers together," Samuel encouraged, his voice steady. "I believe in you, Marissa." As they began planning, the days turned into a whirlwind of laughter and late-night brainstorming sessions. Samuel found himself drawn to Marissa's unwavering determination, her creativity flowing freely as they collaborated. He watched in awe as she transformed her fears into art, her camera capturing raw, honest moments that told stories more profound than words could express. One evening, while sifting through some of her early photographs, Marissa sighed, a hint of anxiety creeping into her voice. "I just don't know if people will connect with my work. What if they don't see what I see?" "Marissa, you have a way of capturing emotion that's incredibly powerful," Samuel reassured her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You need to trust your instincts. Your perspective is valid, and there are people out there who will resonate with your vision." She looked at him, a mix of gratitude and vulnerability in her gaze. I've always felt like I was just a background character in my own life. It's hard to believe anyone would want to see my work." "Then let's change that. You're not just a background character, you're the protagonist of your own story. This exhibition is your chance to shine," he said, his voice firm yet encouraging. With newfound determination, Marissa decided to hold a small exhibition to showcase her work. She felt a rush of excitement and fear as she prepared for the event. Samuel was right there by her side, helping with the logistics, encouraging her every step of the way. "Marissa, I can't wait for everyone to see your art," Samuel said one day as they hung the photographs on the walls of the small gallery. "These images are going to touch so many hearts." "Thank you for believing in me," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I wouldn't have had the courage to do this without you. Just remember, you're not alone. I'm right here with you," he promised, sincerity radiating from his expression. As the day of the exhibition approached, Marissa felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety coursing through her veins. But Samuel's unwavering support fortified her resolve. On the night of the event, she stood at the entrance, her heart pounding as she welcomed friends and colleagues into the space filled with her work. "Look at this place," Samuel exclaimed, beaming with pride. "You've done it, Marissa. This is your moment. Own it." With Samuel's encouragement ringing in her ears, Marissa took a deep breath, ready to share her heart and her art with the world. Samuel leaned back in his chair, his mind drifting to the conversation he had just had with Marissa. The way she spoke about her passion for photography had ignited something within him, a spark he hadn't felt in years. But as he savored the moment, the door swung open, and Oliver strode in, his brow furrowed with concern. "Hey, man, can we talk?" Oliver asked, his voice tinged with urgency. Samuel sensed a storm brewing behind his friend's usual nonchalant demeanor. "Sure. What's up?" Samuel replied, trying to keep his tone light, though he could feel a knot forming in his stomach. Oliver closed the door behind him, his expression shifting from casual to serious. "Look, I've been noticing something between you and Marissa. And I think you need to be careful." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "Careful? Why?" "She's just a colleague. We've been having some good conversations." "Exactly," Oliver emphasized, his voice rising slightly. "That's the problem. She's not one of us, Sam. She's not at our level." He crossed his arms, leaning against the wall as if to distance himself from the very notion of Marissa. "Not at our level?" Samuel echoed, incredulity creeping into his voice. "What do you mean by that?" "Come on," Oliver sighed, exasperated. "You know how it is. We're in a world where image matters. Marissa is sweet and all, but let's face it, she's shy, insecure. She's not someone you want to be associated with if you want to keep climbing the corporate ladder." Samuel's heart raced, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Are you really saying that? You think I shouldn't be friends with someone just because she doesn't fit your mold of success?" Oliver shrugged, his demeanor nonchalant. But his eyes betrayed him. "I'm just looking out for you, man. You've worked too hard to throw it away for someone who doesn't even know how to stand up for herself." "That's not fair, Oliver," Samuel shot back, feeling the heat of the moment. "You don't know her like I do. She has depth, passion, something you wouldn't recognize even if it hit you in the face. You see her as less than because she doesn't flaunt herself like others do. That's your problem, not hers." Oliver's expression hardened, and he pushed himself off the wall. "You're blinded, Samuel. You think this is some kind of fairy tale? You're a successful businessman. You can't let yourself get distracted by someone who doesn't belong in your world." "Belong?" Samuel repeated, his voice low and steady. "Isn't that what we're fighting against in the first place? This elitism? The idea that only certain people are worthy of success or happiness. That's why I can't stand the way you talk about her. She's more than just a less than. She's a person." Oliver shook his head, frustration evident in his features. "I'm just trying to keep you grounded, man. You're not thinking straight." Samuel took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "And what about you, Oliver? Are you really thinking straight? Or are you just too caught up in your own fears and insecurities to see what's right in front of you?" The room fell silent, tension thickening the air around them. Oliver's jaw clenched, and he finally turned away, the realization of their differing perspectives hanging heavily between them. "I just don't want to see you hurt," he muttered, almost to himself. "Then maybe you should start trusting me to make my own choices," Samuel replied, his voice firm but still tinged with unease. "I can handle my own life, Oliver." As Oliver left the room, the door clicking shut behind him, Samuel felt a mix of relief and agitation. He knew he had to confront Oliver's prejudices, but the weight of his friend's words lingered, gnawing at his conscience. And beneath that weight was Marissa's image, vulnerable yet strong, passionate yet tentative. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing at a precipice, about to leap into an unknown but exhilarating future. Yet, the thought of losing Oliver, his longtime friend, loomed over him like a dark cloud. Would he have to choose between the two? The idea felt more daunting than he had anticipated. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden hue across the city. Samuel and Marissa found themselves on a quiet rooftop, the bustling sounds of traffic below muted by the height and the gentle breeze. They had ventured out to capture the sunset, an idea that had emerged during their earlier conversations. As they set up the camera, the air was thick with an unspoken tension, a mixture of excitement and apprehension that simmered just beneath the surface. "Do you think we'll get the right shot?" Marissa asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty as she fiddled with the camera settings. She looked up at Samuel, her eyes reflecting both the fading light and her own insecurities. Samuel turned to her, a reassuring smile spreading across his face. "With your eye for detail, I have no doubt. Just trust yourself, Marissa. You have a unique perspective that most people overlook." Marissa bit her lip, her gaze dropping to the ground. I've always felt like I'm just a background character in everyone else's story. I'm not sure I can step into the spotlight. What if they don't see me?" Samuel stepped closer, his expression softening as he studied her. "You're not invisible to me. You never were. I see you, Marissa. You have a voice, and your story matters." The sincerity in his voice made her heart flutter. "You really think so?" she asked, her cheeks flushing. "Absolutely," Samuel replied, taking a breath before continuing. "I've spent so much time chasing what others expect of me, and it's exhausting. But when I'm with you, it's different. I feel free." Marissa's eyes widened slightly, a mix of surprise and hope. "I've never thought about it that way. I'm always so worried about not being good enough, but maybe I need to focus on what I love instead." "Exactly," he said, his enthusiasm contagious. "You love photography. You love capturing moments and emotions. That's what matters. Share that with the world, let them see through your lens." As they continued to adjust the camera, the conversation flowed more easily. It was as if an invisible barrier had been lifted, allowing their vulnerabilities to intertwine. Marissa shared stories of her childhood, the moments that had shaped her, times when she had tried to express herself but felt dismissed or overlooked. "I remember in high school, I took a photography class. The teacher told me my pictures were average and that I should focus on something else," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I believed him. I let that define me for years." Samuel's heart ached at her words. "That teacher was wrong," he said firmly. "You have a gift, Marissa. It's not just about the technical skills, it's about how you see the world. Your perspective is what makes your work special." Her gaze met his, and for a moment, the world around them faded away. "You really think I can do this?" she murmured, vulnerability etched on her face. "I know you can. Just look at how you see things. You capture emotions, moments that others overlook. And that's powerful," he encouraged, feeling a surge of admiration for her resilience. Marissa swallowed hard, a mix of emotion flooding her. "I've always wanted to create something meaningful, but I've let fear hold me back. I don't want to feel that way anymore." Samuel stepped even closer, their breaths mingling in the cool evening air. "Then don't. Take that fear and turn it into something beautiful. You deserve to shine." In that moment, Marissa felt a wave of warmth wash over her. She had always been so afraid of judgment, so caught up in what others thought. But here, with Samuel, she felt seen, valued. It was liberating. "Thank you, Samuel. For believing in me," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Always," he replied, his gaze unwavering. As they stood together, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a vibrant array of colors across the sky. Samuel felt an overwhelming urge to bridge the gap between them, to close the distance that still lingered. "Can I show you something?" he asked, his voice low and inviting. "Of course," Marissa replied, her heart racing. He reached out, gently taking her hand, and led her to the edge of the rooftop. Together, they gazed at the city below, the lights beginning to twinkle like stars. The moment was electric, charged with possibilities. As they stood side by side, Samuel turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not just a background character, Marissa. You're the lead in your own story. Don't ever forget that." The weight of his words hung in the air, and as Marissa looked into his eyes, she felt something shift between them. It was a moment of clarity, a realization that they were both on the precipice of something profound. "Can I?" she began hesitantly, her voice faltering. "Can you what?" he prompted gently, his gaze unwavering. "Can I take your picture?" she asked, a shy smile breaking through her nervousness. Samuel chuckled softly, the tension dissipating. "Of course, but only if you promise to let me take one of you next." "Deal," she replied, her smile widening. Marissa raised her camera, capturing not just an image but a moment that felt like the beginning of something beautiful. As days flew by, the anticipation of Marissa's exhibition loomed closer, sending waves of anxiety crashing over her. Samuel had been her rock throughout the preparations, his unwavering support providing her with the courage she needed to showcase her work. Yet, in the shadows, Oliver lurked, his disapproval thickening the air between them. On the day of the exhibition, the gallery was abuzz with excitement. The walls were adorned with Marissa's photographs, capturing raw emotions and candid moments that reflected her unique perspective of the world. Samuel arrived early, adjusting the lighting and ensuring every detail was perfect. He could feel Marissa's nerves radiating from her as she paced back and forth, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her blouse. "Marissa, you've poured your heart into these photos. You have nothing to worry about," Samuel reassured, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "What if they don't like them? What if I'm just not good enough?" "Look at me," he said, his voice firm yet kind. "You are incredibly talented. This is your moment to shine. Just be yourself." Marissa nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. As guests began to filter into the gallery, her heart raced. She could see people admiring her work, their faces lighting up with each photograph. Despite her initial trepidation, a small ember of pride ignited within her. But as the evening progressed, Samuel could sense the tension brewing in the corner of the room. Oliver had arrived, and his presence was like a storm cloud on the horizon. Samuel spotted him leaning against a wall, arms crossed, a scowl etched on his face as he scanned the crowd, his gaze occasionally flickering to Marissa. "Why does he look like he's ready to pounce?" Samuel muttered under his breath, a protective instinct surging through him. "Maybe he just doesn't like art," Marissa replied, forcing a smile, though her voice trembled slightly. Just then, Oliver made his way over to them, his demeanor cold. Well, if it isn't the artist and her biggest fan," he said, sarcasm dripping from his words. "How quaint. Did you really think this would go over well?" Marissa's face fell, the weight of his words pulling her down. Don't listen to him, Marissa," Samuel interjected, stepping forward. "Your work is fantastic. People are enjoying it. You deserve this moment." Oliver scoffed. "Is that so? Just because you're playing the knight in shining armor doesn't mean she's any good. There's a difference between support and delusion, Samuel." "Enough, Oliver," Samuel said, his tone sharp. "You might see her as less than, but I see someone who has immense talent and strength. You need to learn to appreciate that." Marissa felt a rush of warmth at Samuel's words, yet Oliver's expression darkened. "You think you know her? You think this is real?" Just wait until the novelty wears off, and she's back to being the same invisible girl she always was. The words hung heavy in the air, and Marissa's heart sank. She felt exposed, vulnerable under Oliver's scrutiny. Samuel noticed her discomfort and turned to her, his eyes softening. Don't let him get to you. This is your time. Remember why you did this. Marissa took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus on the room filled with admiration for her work. You're right. I did this for me, she whispered, her gaze hardening as she faced Oliver. I've worked hard for this, and I won't let anyone undermine my achievements. Oliver huffed, crossing his arms tighter. Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you. As Oliver retreated, Samuel turned to Marissa, his heart swelling with pride. You handled that beautifully, Marissa. I'm so proud of you. Marissa met his gaze, her heart racing, a mix of gratitude and admiration flooding her. Thank you, Samuel. I don't think I could have done this without you. With renewed confidence, Marissa stepped away from the confrontation. She engaged with her guests, explaining her photos, sharing stories behind each shot. Samuel watched her, a smile spreading across his face as he saw her begin to flourish in the attention. As the night wore on, the gallery buzzed with excitement. People were genuinely enamored by her work, offering compliments and sharing their interpretations. The atmosphere was electric, and Marissa radiated a newfound sense of self. Look at you, Marissa, Samuel said, leaning closer to her as they shared a moment amidst the crowd. You're amazing. I feel free, she replied, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of disbelief and joy. Samuel couldn't help but feel a rush of emotions as he witnessed her transformation. She was no longer the timid woman he had first met, she was vibrant, alive, and fiercely talented. The night was turning into a triumph, and for the first time, Marissa truly felt seen. As lights of the gallery flickered as the last guests meandered through the exhibition area, discussing the photographs that adorned the walls. Marissa stood in a corner, her heart racing, eyes darting nervously between the crowd and her work. She had poured her soul into each shot, capturing not just images but emotions, yet all she could feel was the gnawing presence of doubt. Nearby, Oliver leaned against the wall, arms crossed, wearing a disapproving frown. He had been a constant shadow, his earlier comments about Marissa echoing in Samuel's mind, clouding the air with tension. Samuel, having noticed Marissa's discomfort, felt a surge of protectiveness. He had come to admire her strength, her talent, and the authenticity that shone through her photographs. But Oliver's words lingered like a dark cloud, threatening to overshadow everything they had built together. Do you really think this is a good idea? Oliver's voice cut through the noise, low and sardonic. He stepped closer to Samuel, his expression hardening. She's just a nobody with a camera. You're making a mistake by getting involved with her. Samuel's jaw tightened as he turned to face Oliver. What do you mean, just a nobody? Marissa is talented, and she's a wonderful person. You don't know her like I do. Oh, please, Oliver scoffed, rolling his eyes. You're only seeing what you want to see. She's not on your level. You're a businessman, and she's just a photographer. The words stung, but Samuel refused to let Oliver's prejudice dictate his feelings. You're wrong, Oliver. Marissa has a vision, and she's brave enough to pursue it. Maybe if you opened your eyes, you'd see that. Oliver stepped forward, his voice rising slightly. I'm looking out for you, man. You don't want to get involved in something that could damage your reputation. You're at the top of your game. Why would you risk it for someone like her? Someone like her? Samuel's voice was now tense, filled with a mix of anger and disbelief. You mean someone who has dreams and aspirations? Just because she's not a corporate shark like you doesn't mean she's less worthy. You're being superficial. Across the room, Marissa caught snippets of their conversation, her heart sinking further with each word. She had felt the shift in Samuel's demeanor, and now, hearing him defend her sent a mix of hope and fear coursing through her veins. But the specter of Oliver's disdain was suffocating. In that moment, she stepped away from the wall where she had been trying to blend into the shadows. "Samuel." Her voice trembled slightly, a reflection of her vulnerability. "Maybe this was a mistake. I can't compete with your world." "No, Marissa, don't say that." Samuel turned, his heart aching at the sight of her uncertainty. He took a step toward her, reaching out instinctively. "You're not competing with anyone. You're incredible just as you are. Please don't let him get to you." Marissa looked between the two men, feeling the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. I don't want to be a burden or a joke. I thought I could do this, but maybe I was wrong." "No, you were right," Samuel insisted, his voice firm yet gentle. "You deserve to be here, and you deserve to be celebrated for your work. I believe in you, Marissa." Oliver, watching the exchange, felt his irritation boiling over. "You think this is some kind of fairy tale? You're living in a dream, Samuel. Wake up. She's going to bring you down." "Enough." Samuel's voice thundered, surprising even himself. "You don't get to dictate who I can or cannot be with. Marissa is not some project for me. She's a person with real talent and feelings, and I won't let you belittle her." Marissa stood between them, heart racing, as she felt the intensity of Samuel's defense wash over her. "Samuel, please," she whispered, unsure how to navigate the tension. "I don't want to cause problems between you two." Samuel stepped closer to her, his gaze softening. "You're not the problem, Marissa. Oliver is too afraid to see that you're more than what he wants you to be. You're strong, and you've fought hard to be here. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Tears pricked at Marissa's eyes as she absorbed his words. In that moment, it felt as if the world around them faded away. "But what if I'm not enough?" she asked quietly, the weight of her insecurities spilling into the air. "You're more than enough," Samuel replied, his voice steady. "You're everything I didn't know I needed. Don't let anyone, especially Oliver, make you feel less than that." As Oliver seethed, Samuel turned back, ready to confront his friend once and for all. "You need to understand that I won't abandon Marissa. She means too much to me." The tension was palpable, but for Marissa, Samuel's words were a lifeline. She felt seen, valued, and for the first time, she began to believe in her own worth. As lights dimmed in the gallery, a soft buzz of anticipation filled the air as guests began to mingle and admire the photographs adorning the walls. Samuel stood to the side, his heart racing with a mix of pride and anxiety for Marissa. He could see her across the room, nervously adjusting her glasses as she greeted attendees. She looked beautiful, yet there was a flicker of insecurity in her eyes that tugged at his heart. "Look at her, Samuel," said a voice beside him. It was one of his colleagues, Anna, with a glass of wine in hand. "She's glowing. You must be so proud." "I am," Samuel replied, his gaze fixed on Marissa. "She deserves this moment." As Marissa began to engage with the crowd, Samuel felt a surge of determination. He had been so consumed by the expectations of his career and the opinions of others that he almost lost sight of what truly mattered. It was time to break free from Oliver's shadow and the shallow values they had once shared. "Hey, Marissa," he called, making his way through the crowd. She turned, and their eyes locked. A smile spread across her face, brightening the room. "Samuel," she exclaimed, her voice a mix of surprise and joy. "What do you think?" He stepped closer, his voice low and sincere. "I think you've done something incredible here. Your work speaks volumes." He gestured toward one of her photographs, a breathtaking image of a child laughing in a sunlit park. "This captures joy in a way I've never seen before." Marissa blushed, her cheeks turning a soft shade of pink. "You really think so?" "I wasn't sure if I was ready to show everyone." My photos, my story. Your story matters, Samuel interrupted gently. You've poured your heart into this, and it shows. Don't let anyone, especially Oliver, take that away from you. Just then, the crowd erupted in applause as a local art critic approached Marissa. This is stunning work, he said, his expression serious yet impressed. You have a unique perspective. I would love to write a feature on you for the art journal. Thank you. Marissa's eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and excitement. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Samuel urged, his eyes sparkling with encouragement. You've earned every bit of this recognition. Marissa nodded, her confidence growing. Yes, I'd love that. Thank you so much. As the critic moved on, Samuel took a step closer to Marissa, his voice softening. You're incredible, you know that. You've inspired me to reevaluate my own life. I've been so caught up in the business world, I forgot what it means to truly connect with someone. Marissa looked at him, her brow furrowing slightly. Is that why you were always so distant? I thought you didn't care. I thought I had to be a certain way to succeed, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. But standing here with you, I realize that I want to be authentic. You've shown me that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. Their moment was interrupted by the sound of applause as guests continued to admire her work. Samuel felt a swell of pride for Marissa, but his heart also ached for their future. He wanted to protect her from Oliver's harsh judgment and ensure she never felt invisible again. Samuel. Oliver's voice cut through the atmosphere, filled with an edge of tension. He approached them with a forced smile, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. I see you're still playing the supportive boyfriend. How quaint. Samuel felt his anger flare at Oliver's condescending tone. This isn't about you, Oliver. Marissa deserves to be celebrated for her talent, not belittled. Come on, Samuel, Oliver sneered. You know she's just a nobody. This is all a phase. Samuel turned to Marissa, his heart racing. Don't listen to him. You're not a nobody. You're extraordinary, and I'm proud to be by your side. Marissa looked between the two men, her expression torn. I appreciate your support, Samuel, but I can handle this. Yes, you can, Samuel affirmed, stepping protectively in front of her. But you shouldn't have to. You deserve people who lift you up, not bring you down. As the crowd continued to celebrate around them, Samuel felt a sense of clarity. He would no longer allow Oliver's negativity to dictate his life. Marissa's strength and authenticity had opened his eyes, and he was ready to embrace his own truth alongside hers. With the applause ringing in his ears and the warmth of Marissa's presence beside him, Samuel knew this was just the beginning. Together, they could face any challenge, and he was determined to stand by her side, no matter what. As night fell, the gallery buzzed with excitement, the air thick with the scent of fresh paint and blooming flowers. Samuel and Marissa stood amidst the crowd, their hearts still racing from the success of her exhibition. The photographs framed on the walls captured not only faces but stories, emotions, and the very essence of the subjects. Marissa's eyes sparkled as she observed the reactions of the guests, each compliment fueling her newfound confidence. I can't believe this is really happening, she whispered, her cheeks flushed with a mix of pride and disbelief. Samuel turned to her, a broad smile spreading across his face. You deserve every bit of this, Marissa. Your work is incredible, he replied, his voice steady and sincere. I knew you had it in you. As they stood together, a well-dressed man approached, his presence commanding attention. He introduced himself as Ethan Hart, a renowned photographer known for his striking portraits and powerful storytelling through images. Marissa, your work is exceptional, he said, his voice a smooth blend of admiration and professionalism. I would love to discuss a potential collaboration. Marissa's heart raced, a mix of excitement and trepidation washing over her. Oh, thank you. I'm flattered, she stammered, glancing at Samuel for reassurance. Ethan continued, I see a lot of potential in your style. If you're interested, I'd like to offer you an opportunity to work with me on a project that could really showcase your talent to a larger audience. Wow, that sounds amazing. Samuel chimed in, his enthusiasm palpable. You should definitely consider it. Marissa felt a knot form in her stomach. I don't know. I mean, what if? I'm not good enough. I've never worked on something like that before, she admitted, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Samuel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You are good enough, Marissa. This is your chance to shine. Don't let fear hold you back. Remember what you told me about chasing your dreams? She took a deep breath, lost in the warmth of his support. You're right. I don't want to disappoint anyone, she confessed, her eyes flickering with doubt. Disappointment comes from not trying, Samuel said firmly. You have to believe in yourself. I believe in you. Just as Marissa was about to respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and froze, her heart sinking as she read the message. It was from Oliver. Hey, just wanted to say congratulations on your exhibition. But I need to be honest with you. I had feelings for you long before all this. I thought Samuel was different, but I can't help feeling like I've lost something important. Just wanted to get that off my chest. Marissa. Samuel's voice cut through her thoughts, concern etched on his face. What's wrong? She swallowed hard, the weight of Oliver's words pressing down on her. It's Oliver, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. He just messaged me, and he said he had feelings for me. Samuel's expression darkened, a mix of anger and hurt flashing across his features. That guy doesn't know what he's missing. He's always treated you like you're less than you are. You deserved someone who sees your worth. I know, but it just makes me question everything again. What if I'm not enough? Marissa replied, tears welling in her eyes. What if he's right? Marissa, don't you dare let his insecurities define you, Samuel said, his voice rising slightly in intensity. You've come so far. You're not just enough. You're extraordinary. Marissa looked up at him, searching for clarity in the storm of emotions swirling inside her. But what if this opportunity with Ethan is just a fluke? What if I can't live up to it? Then you'll learn and grow from it. That's what life is all about. But if you don't take this step, you'll never know what you're capable of, he urged, his eyes locking onto hers with unwavering conviction. And I'll be right here, supporting you every step of the way. In that moment, the doubts began to fade, replaced by a flicker of determination. You're right, she said, wiping her tears away. I can't let fear hold me back anymore. Exactly. So, what do you say? Samuel smiled softly, encouraging her to look back at Ethan, who was patiently waiting for her response. Taking a deep breath, Marissa squared her shoulders, her heart pounding with newfound courage. Let's do it, she said, her voice steady. I'll accept your offer, Ethan. As she spoke, she felt Samuel's pride radiating beside her, and in that instant, she realized that no matter the challenges ahead, she was ready to embrace them. Together, they would face whatever came next, hand in hand.